we are going to discuss four elements. One is prerequisites for energy management. Second is the requirements laid out by ISO 50001 and HIG facility environment module. Number three, key factors for bringing change. And then we will discuss about how to start, with a quick check or a mini audit to establish baseline of or understanding where the factory stands at the moment in terms of energy efficiency or energy management. So as this is something that we also spoke earlier in the morning. So number one is understanding the organizational context. Knowing our customer is the most important aspect of any service delivery, and knowing where the customer stands, what are their problems, what are the solutions they are looking for, what are the challenges they are facing, is the first point that we need to take care of. And if we are able to highlight or address the right issues, that is when the customer start. So build, this is very, very important to trust build as well. And once we understand the organizational context, then we move on to developing top management interest and their commitment, and then we understand their baseline issues. So starting with the organizational context, number one is understanding what are the relevant issues, either internal or external, for the organizations. These might include market trends, business prospects, organizational mission, vision, growth targets. Where does a company want to go? So if a company says, for example, that we have a target from our customer that we must convert 40% of our electrical energy to renewable sources, then we know that this is what they want to do. And then we also can already start looking at various aspects where we can help them. Or if they say that our customer wants us to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions by 50%. So when we are dealing with this company, we know that this is one issue that they are facing on the external side, on the business perspective. So we have to support them in that as well. Or if a company is looking forward to expanding their facility or putting up new facilities, purchasing new machines. So what happens sometimes is that we go to a boiler or an engine or a machine, we say, okay, this machine is very old and we need to improve some efficiencies here. But the factory says, but look, we are replacing this in 6 months. So we can exclude this machine from our energy audit in that case as well, if they are doing it pretty quickly. But if it is still taking 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, then we can include that as well and tell them that, okay, maybe we can save energy now for the 2 years when this machine is still running, if there is a quick payback, and then we can replace the machine afterwards when it comes in. Then looking at internal capacities, do they have teams available? Do they train their employees? Do they provide any awareness? Do they have any program that ensures that their employees are up to date regarding the knowledge on energy efficiency, regarding the mission and vision and growth targets of the company, and regarding the market trends and business prospects and the pressures that this company is facing on the environment and climate front? So there could be many other internal issues, not talking about technical issues, but we're talking about strategical and organizational issues. First and foremost is the regulatory bodies who enforce their laws and who have regulations related to pollution control or related to mandatory energy audits or having mandatory energy manager, for example. These kind of things are there in many countries, especially in Asian region. Now this is really coming up very fast, and in Vietnam you already have this law. And then customers who are setting their targets for decarbonization, decarbonizing supply chain, or introducing renewable energy. Then there are shareholders, stakeholders who are expecting return on investment. So if we are investing on energy, we need to convince stakeholders as well that, look, we're investing on energy efficiency because we are going to ultimately increase our returns. That is what they expect. Communities, what do they expect? They expect that there is a factory in the facility, in our vicinity, who does not pollute our environment, who does not generate too many noise. If a factory is using coal, if you often go to a to these kind of factories, there are big lorries and trolleys who bring coal to the factories, and this whole passageway is filled with coal dust, which settles from these lorries on the roads. And if government or the industrial society or the industrial area is not cleaning it up, the life of these people becomes hell, because this is particulate matter and they breathe this coal dust, and this is very, very hazardous. So the nearby communities are getting affected by emissions, and then employees who are expecting safe and healthy working conditions. So there could be many, many parties who we need to take care of, who are actually interested in our energy performance, who we need to satisfy in one way or other. Then we come towards setting scope and boundary. So it is very, very important to set boundaries of where our energy management activities or energy efficiency activities would focus on. And here it is important to understand what is actually in our authority to control. So if a factory, for example, is purchasing electricity from grid, emissions of grid are not under their control. So they cannot do anything about that. They just have to purchase electricity. But if they have to reduce their emissions, and if grid emissions are very high, then they need to switch to another energy source which has lower emissions. Then that is in their control. So we must see what is actually in our control in terms of energy efficiency, energy sources, energy use, consumption. What are the processes that we need to exclude, and why? Even if we are not going for energy management system, but only going there for energy audit, this is very, very important to identify which areas are included and which areas are excluded. And again, asking why is very important. Everything starts with the why. When we ask why, the brains start opening and people start exploring, okay, why? So a factory said that we want to exclude our boilers, and I said, why? Why do you want to exclude the boilers? They said, because the boiler is operated by a contractor. For a moment, I thought, yeah, since the boiler is being operated by the contractor, we could exclude that. But when I did the scoping visit, I went to the factory and I saw the boiler. The boiler was inside the facility, it was not outside the facility. It was very nearby their machines and their engine hall. And the boiler was very inefficient and very unsafe. The boiler safeties were taken off. It was causing a lot of smoke, and the health and safety conditions at the boiler area was very bad. So I told them that we cannot exclude this, because if this boiler causes any accident, this will cause accident to your facility, and obviously then all the legal suits and the losses and financial losses will also be put on you. So we need to include this. So, and then they agreed, and we included that boiler into our scope as well. And we also have to see if we have to go for a whole organization, if we have multiple factories, if we are going for only one factory. Sometimes the factory is big, but they only want you to conduct audit of only a small area, because the top management is not very committed. Middle management wants to show them that if we get an energy audit, we get many benefits. So they want to do a pilot in one area, we show some savings there, and then they increase the scope. But even if they want to do it, we need to ensure in the beginning that they have selected right scope, and the phasing of the process is wisely developed. That okay, we do a pilot, then how do we qualify, or how do we progress from this pilot phase towards a full-fledged energy efficiency and management phase. It is very, very also important that we do not exclude any type of energy that is within the scope and boundaries. So if a factory, for example, says that we are only going for audit of the dyeing process, but the dyeing factory receives steam from a common steam boiler room, steams compressed air from a common compressed air room, which is supplying to other facilities as well. We have to include that boiler room and that compressed air room as well into our scope, because it is providing energy for this facility. Unless that they have a sale purchase agreement with this boiler house, where boiler house only sells energy to this dyeing facility, for example, and then we are only responsible from that steam flow meter which is inside the dyeing facility and onwards. And this is what we need to clarify in the beginning as well. There are some subcontractor activities that can be excluded. Again, taking the example that there's a boiler, for example, that is owned and operated by a subcontractor, but also ensuring that this boiler and its activities are not interacting with the facility or the factory processes. If it is, for example, outside the boundary, or if it is inside the boundary but in a far away corner where it is by no means interacting with the rest of the facility, then this can be excluded. Or if we are purchasing steam from another nearby factory or another subcontractor, then we can consider steam purchased as an energy source rather than the boiler itself. So that there are only few areas, when few possibilities where we can exclude some of the sources. Otherwise, we should include every energy source. Once we have understood the issues, understood which parties are there, what issues, what influences they have, what interests they have, then we have set up scope and boundaries with top management. Then it is important to create an in-house awareness and raise the readiness to change. So what are the factors, the key factors that influence the willingness to change in a company? Number one is degree of dissatisfaction. So if consider that I am the CEO of a factory, and I think that energy cost is not very significant in my production cost, and I don't care if I spend 5% more or 5% less, because at the end I'm able to charge that amount to the customer. That means that I am not dissatisfied with my condition. There is a motorcycle manufacturer in Pakistan, and my friend there is a utility manager. And I asked him, why don't you take actions on energy efficiency? He said, look, Salman, we sell one motorbike for 70,000 rupees, and our energy cost is only 600 rupees. If our energy cost increases, we increase the price of the motorbike. So we don't care if there is more energy cost, because our customer loves our motorbike and they're willing to pay more. So this means they are not dissatisfied. They're satisfied with their current condition. So if they are satisfied, we cannot move forward. We have to create a degree of dissatisfaction. We have to tell them that even if you are satisfied in the cost terms, how would you be satisfied in the climate terms? So first of all, creating that dissatisfaction is very important. Once the dissatisfaction with the current situation, with the energy losses is there, then clear and publicly announced vision. Where do we want to go? The desired state in the future. What do we want to achieve? And then deciding the first practical steps. What will be the first steps that we take towards achieving that goal that we're setting? So if we have a goal in mind, we say, okay, we want to reduce our energy cost by 5% in 1 year, and we want to reduce our emissions by 3% in 1 year. Does setting a target improve our energy cost? The answer is no. The energy cost will improve when we start moving towards the right direction, when we start taking steps, as again coming back to the right steps, small steps, but sustainable and continual improvement steps. And if we do not move at all, then nothing will change. And then another key factor is cost of change. So there could be financial cost of change, how much investment is needed, how much machine downtime is needed to make that change. And then there is emotional cost as well. So imagine that we say that we have a coal boiler for past 20 years, we've been operating it, and now suddenly we want to switch from coal to natural gas, and we want to discard our coal boiler. So what will happen is that our boiler operators would think that since they have never operated a natural gas boiler, they would think that they won't be capable enough, and then this sense of loss of job is such a big thing that people will get demotivated. And this is the emotional cost there. If you have manual operations, if we have, for example, these old washing machines where we need one person on each machine, and now we are bringing in an automated machine which needs one person on four machines, for example, and then this already means a loss of three persons jobs, which is a big emotional cost. So how to ensure that this emotional aspect does not hinder, how to ensure that these people consider themselves safe in this environment and do not feel that their jobs will be lost, and that the company thinks about their continuity and assigning them new tasks, for example, and conveys to them that this will not harm them. So this is very, very important. So when these are put into a formula, this is called a Glacier formula, and this is a changed version. So Glacier made of a different formula in the beginning, which had different letters, and then Dunham-Miller actually made some changes to it. So this is a Dunham-Miller version, but this is still called Glacier formula, which says in this formula C is change. So change will be brought only when the degree of dissatisfaction from the current situation is there, and then vision of a possible future state, a target of possible future state, that is V, is existing, and first concrete steps are taken. If these all together bring up such a benefits which are greater than the resistance to change, and the resistance to change is because of financial factors as well as because of emotional factors. So D and V and F, the product of these, if this is bigger than the resistance of change, only then the change will occur. But if resistance is bigger and these factors are not big enough, if we are not dissatisfied enough, or if we don't have a clear vision in mind, or if we are not moving in the right direction, taking first steps, then the change will never occur. So understanding where the company is lacking at that time, is it dissatisfaction that they're lacking in, or they are not sure what to achieve, what targets to take, or if they are not really sure what steps they can take. So when we go to factories, we need to understand at what of these D, V, and F they are stuck at, or maybe they are stuck at the resistance to change. Maybe the resistance to change is very, very high. So we need to analyze why there is resistance to change and what factors we can improve on. This is something that we need to focus on when we are trying to move in a systematic way, or even if we are talking about an energy efficiency measure, and we think that, for example, a certain measure is very, very important for the factory to take, payback is very quick, but then the factory is not implementing it. And we often get frustrated that why is the factory not implemented? The payback is only 10 months. Why are they not implementing it? Then we have to see where they are lacking actually. Is the resistance to change very big? Are they having financial issues? Or are they redirecting their finances to somewhere else? So a company, I told a company that they could spend $30,000 and they would save $17,000 a year. That would mean 17 to 18 months payback. And this measure is also very sustainable, and it would stay there for more than 10 years as well. So right after 1.5 years, rest of things will be savings, but they are not willing to invest. And then we analyzed what are the problems, and we saw that they are actually investing in another facility and they are building a new factory. So all their finances are directed towards this new facility, and only once this new facility is developed, then they can attend back to this facility. So this is something that we need to analyze when we go to the factory. So always keep this formula for change in mind, that whenever we are trying to bring about any change. In the leadership by top management, the top management has to set a very clear policy, had to set the objectives or goals to achieve, and has to set measurable targets. Facility environment module in the environmental management section requires a factory, asks a factory if the facility have a company environmental management strategy that guides long-term decision making on environmental management. And it asks for all the aspects: energy, water, wastewater, chemical management, air emissions, solid waste. And it asks the factories to address their significant impacts, identify what are the biggest impacts we have, what are our compliance objectives, and then um, is this policy being communicated to everybody? Is it fully supported by leadership? Does it include plans for achievement that provide what actions to be taken, what resources are required, what are the responsibilities, who will implement what, timelines, how the results will be evaluated, and at least should have a more than 3 years plan in future. And it should be annually reviewed by the facility managers. These are the requirements in different questions set up by HIG FEM. Similar requirements are set up by ISO 50001 2018 version as well, ensuring that it is appropriate to the organization. It provides a framework of how the objectives will be set, targets will be set, how will be reviewed, and how the factory is ensuring that they will provide information, resources, and how will they ensure continual improvement, legal requirements and other requirements, and ensuring that energy efficient products are procured. So designs are considering energy efficiency whenever we are doing a new designing of a facility or something like that. So you can see that this provides details of what we need to put in the policy. HIG FEM talks about how to manage this policy, how to communicate it and what kind of plans it should have. Very much overlapping with each other, just wording is different. As I said earlier, if we follow one of these, we automatically are normally able to follow the other system. Forming a change management team or an energy management team, this should not only be engineering people or only the compliance people. It should be a multidisciplinary team, which must include finance people, compliance people as well, procurement, production, engineering. So depends on how big an organization is. If it is a very small factory, sometimes only one person can be the energy manager and could include other people as and when required. But it is important to identify roles and responsibilities. So sometimes factories identify a big team, but nobody knows what their contribution is, what their role should be. So this is very important that their roles are clear, a responsibility matrix can be made, who will do what. Then typical questions you can ask while picking a team: what are the most critical issues, where they are. For example, if you say that biggest losses are in dyeing and finishing facility, then we need to include more people from dyeing and finishing. If there are very less issues in the garment stitching area, then we might need to include only one person there. And then who are the people who can allocate resources? So finance people, top management people who can issue policies. Then who are the people who are handling energy? So energy manager, electrical manager, boiler manager, engine manager, for example, engine operator. And then who are the people who are directly concerned with the use of energy? So who are the energy users? Who can bring credibility to your program? So sometimes there are people in the factory who everybody likes, who are motivators in the factory and everybody likes to work with them. These people are usually those who are working in a factory for 20 years or 30 years, and they're respected by everybody. Or sometimes they are not directly linked with energy, but they can motivate others, bring an external expert to talk about it. Who do employees trust? So if there are managers who don't have very good reputation, maybe we can give them a different role, and those who have good reputation of working with employees can be given leading roles. Then people who have strong knowledge, who can bring in expert opinions. And then also thinking about do we need people only from within the factory, or we also need to include some experts, some external experts, or some brand people, or some supplier people, for example? So these are different questions that we can ask while picking our team. And then conducting a quick check. So understanding, so for example, making this kind of a graph, just like the graph we made, we saw a graph how in which of the sustainable development goals Vietnam is progressing and which of these are not progressing. Similarly, we can make a spider web, that if the energy policy is up to mark or not, if they are investing or not, if the implementation is going at the right pace, is the policy being communicated, is the information system providing right answers, is the organization rightly set up, and the energy team is developed properly. So there are different tools. So there is one maturity matrix which my organization hosts, and this tool was financed by the German Ministry of Development Cooperation. This is called Energy Management System Maturity Matrix. Then there is HIC facility environmental module, of which questions we already discussed. There is another self-assessment tool by Carbon Trust, which is also available there, and then another tool which is by Clean by Design. This tool of Clean by Design is technical in nature. So I would suggest that first we use one of the above tools, a maturity matrix, the Carbon Trust, or HIC facility environment module, do a quick check of the management system, and after that we use the Clean by Design tool, which is specifically made for technical issues of textile industry.